God's intention is that man would rest. His original intention was not that man would work, but it's that man would rest. If you go all the way back to the beginning in Genesis, we see that man was not charged to work. It wasn't until after the fall that he really had to work, like in a serious way, to provide for his living. But actually, man's first day was a day of rest. God worked for 6 days, and on the 6th day, he created man. So man's first day was actually God's 7th day. And the 7th day, as we see, the 7th day of creation was a day of rest. So man just was there, and then, oh, everything's done. I just rest. But that reveals to us what God's heart is, that man would rest. God's original intention is that man would rest. Now we come to these verses that we saw in Matthew 11, and in particular the verses in Matthew 12 about that experience. And the main thing here, the big topic, is the Sabbath. The Sabbath. And if you go back to the Old Testament, actually I'll read this to you. The Sabbath is a very important item of the law of God. And actually today, the religious Jews still keep the Sabbath to some degree. Yeah, they find ways to get around it, but officially they still keep the Sabbath. So here are the verses. Exodus chapter 20, verses 8 through 11. Remember the Sabbath day so as to sanctify it. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the 7th day is a Sabbath to Jehovah your God. You shall not do any work, you nor your son nor your daughter, your male servant nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor the sojourner with you who is within your gates. For in 6 days Jehovah made heaven and earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the 7th day. Therefore Jehovah blessed the Sabbath day and sanctified it. So the purpose of the Sabbath is to be a day of rest, right? A day where no one would work, where they would just rest and enjoy God's presence. That is the purpose of the Sabbath. But we see very clearly that it had become something else. Rather than becoming a time where all of God's people could rest and enjoy God and being with one another, it became something that they used to accuse one another, to put down one another, to condemn one another. Oh, how dare you do this? Don't you know it's not lawful? I don't care that you're hungry. I don't care that you're sick. I don't care that you have problems. You need to keep the law. And if you do this or that, you're actually breaking the law. And then they would, I don't know what they would do. Maybe I think they would stone them. It actually says later on that whoever breaks the Sabbath should be put to death. Anyways. But the point is, God's heart was that man would rest. But this charge, this commandment that God had made became something of religion. Again, we're seeing this contrast between Christ and religion. This is the whole point, this whole topic that we're covering. God's heart, what Christ wants is that we would rest. But religion has taken that commandment and made it into something that condemns man and actually even puts more burden on him. It puts more burden on him